I had a patient recently come into the ER for something completely unrelated to what I'm about to talk about, but their routine labs came back and showed that she was now diabetic. When I told her, she cried. She told me her doctor had warned her years earlier that she was pre-diabetic. She said, through her tears, "I knew that this would happen someday." And I asked her, "Why didn't you fix it then?" And she looked at me completely confused and said, "What do you mean, fix it?" She had no idea that prediabetes was something you could actually reverse. Nobody had ever told her that. She thought it was just a waiting room before the inevitable happened. And I explained to her exactly what I'm about to explain to you. And by the time she left that conversation, she was one of the most motivated and grateful patients I've ever had. If we haven't met, I'm Seth. I'm an ER doctor and former special ops guy. If you or someone you love has been told that they're pre-diabetic, this video might be the most important thing that you or they watch all year. So please send it to them or anyone else you love that's on their way towards prediabetes or has diabetes. All right, let's get into it. So let's start with the basics, because most people who hear pre-diabetic walk away with a vague sense of dread and almost no actual understanding of what it really means. So prediabetes means your blood sugar is higher than normal, but not yet high enough to be classified as type 2 diabetes. Specifically, a fasting blood glucose between 100 and 125, or a hemoglobin A1C of between 5.7 and 6.4. A1C is essentially a 3-month average of your blood sugar, which makes it one of the most useful numbers on a standard lab panel. Here's the scale of this problem I'm talking about. 115 million American adults, 42.6%, have prediabetes right now. That's nearly half of the adult population, and we're just talking about adults here. The pediatric conversation is completely separate, but very, very serious. And here's the part that should genuinely alarm you. Only about 1 in 10 people with prediabetes actually know that they have it. Now, let me actually explain what's happening inside your body, because almost nobody walks out of a doctor's appointment with this explained clearly and has an understanding of the actual mechanisms that will make the rest of this video make sense. When you eat food, specifically carbohydrates or sugar, it gets broken down and enters your bloodstream as glucose. Your blood sugar then rises. Glucose floating around in your body at high levels is actually somewhat toxic to your body, so your body wants to clear it out as quickly as it can, and so it does that by getting it into your cells where it can be used as energy. That's where insulin comes in. You probably heard the word insulin before. Your pancreas produces insulin specifically for this job. The pancreas is an organ that sits right here in the middle of your abdomen. Think of insulin as a key. Your cells have locks on them, like door locks, also known as receptors, on their surface. Insulin is the key that fits into that lock and opens the door, allowing glucose to move out of your bloodstream and into the cells where it can be used for fuel. In a healthy, well-functioning system, this works beautifully. You eat, blood sugar rises, insulin is released, the key opens the lock, glucose moves into your cells, blood sugar comes back down. Smooth process, repeated multiple times per day for most of human history without issue. Here's where this breaks down though. When you chronically eat more carbohydrates and sugar than your body actually needs, day after day, year after year, the blood is constantly flooded with too much glucose. Your pancreas responds the only way that it knows how, and that is to pump out more and more insulin to keep unlocking those cellular doors and pushing glucose inside and out of the bloodstream where it becomes toxic at high levels. But your cells start to push back. They are already full of glucose. They don't need any more glucose being shoved into it. So essentially, they start changing the locks on the doors. The receptors become less responsive to insulin. This is what's known as insulin resistance or insulin insensitivity. The key doesn't turn as smoothly anymore in the lock. Your pancreas, sensing that blood sugar is still elevated because glucose isn't getting into the cells efficiently, does what it knows how to do, which is produce even more insulin. More keys, trying harder to force into those increasingly stubborn locks that won't open. For a while, this brute force approach actually works. Your pancreas produces enough excess insulin to overcome that resistance, and your blood sugar numbers stay in a relatively normal range, even though behind the scenes, your insulin levels are already significantly elevated and your system is working far harder than it should have to. This is actually the earliest stages of metabolic dysfunction, often happening years before blood sugar ever rises high enough to show up as diabetes or prediabetes on standard tests, which is exactly why fasting insulin, not just fasting glucose, is one of the labs I always talk about on this channel. It catches the problem years before you are diagnosed with prediabetes. So that's a test that you can order with your doctor, a fasting insulin. Eventually, though, the pancreas, the organ, can't keep up anymore with this pace. It's been working in overdrive for years. Insulin production starts to decline because the pancreas is basically failing. The resistance has gotten worse, and now blood sugar climbs because neither the insulin supply nor the cellular response can compensate anymore. And that's the moment you cross from prediabetes into type 2 diabetes. Prediabetes is not a diagnosis. It's basically a warning. It's your body telling you, with as much clarity as a lab test can offer, that this lock and key system has been under strain for too long, and that you still have a window to fix it before the locks change permanently. The tragedy of this is how few people are told that fixing it is actually an option. So the real question is, why does any of this matter? Why is high blood sugar dangerous in the first place? So let me explain it the way I explain it to my patients, because once you understand what excess glucose is actually doing to your body at the tissue level in real time, this stops being some abstract lab number and starts feeling like exactly what it is, a very slow, very quiet, very unseen emergency. So think of glucose molecules in your bloodstream kind of like tiny shards of glass. Okay, in normal amounts, moving efficiently into your cells, we'll consider them pretty harmless. They're just fuel for your cells. I know glass being fuel doesn't exactly make sense, but stick with me here. When the blood sugar stays elevated for extended periods of time, that excess glucose in your bloodstream starts essentially battering the inside of the linings of every blood vessel in your body. It's called glycation. Glucose molecules binding to proteins and damaging their structure, including the proteins that make up your blood vessel walls. Imagine sandpaper, like very fine grit sandpaper, running continuously over the inside of your arteries, your veins, your capillaries in your body, not once, but continuously every minute, every hour for years. That damage triggers inflammation, and inflammation triggers scarring and stiffening of the blood vessel walls. And stiff, damaged, inflamed blood vessels are the foundation for nearly every catastrophic complication of diabetes. For instance, your eyes, the tiny delicate blood vessels in your retina, are some of the most vulnerable in your entire body to this glucose damage. So diabetic retinopathy is the leading cause of blindness in working age adults in this country. Not old age, not injury, sugar, quietly destroying the blood vessels to your eyes over years until your vision starts to fail. And then there's your kidneys. Your kidneys are essentially a massive filtration system built from millions of tiny blood vessels. Chronically elevated glucose shreds these microscopic vessels over time, just like it does in the eyes. Diabetic nephropathy is one of the leading causes of kidney failure in the entire world. That means dialysis, multiple times per week for the rest of your life, hooked up to a machine doing what your kidneys used to do for free. Absolutely devastating and life-altering diagnosis. And then there's your nerves. High glucose is directly toxic to your nerve tissue. That's why people get diabetic neuropathy, if you've ever heard of that. It typically starts in the feet with numbness, tingling, burning pain that creeps upwards over years. And the part that should really disturb you is this. Because of that nerve damage, people with advanced diabetes often can't feel injuries to their feet because they can't feel their feet at all. So a small cut, a blister, a stubbed toe, something that should be trivial, except their circulation is also damaged from the same glycation process happening in their blood vessels that we already talked about. So that small wound doesn't heal properly. It gets infected. The infection spreads because blood flow can't deliver enough immune response to fight it off. And in advanced cases, that wound ends in amputation. I've watched this happen a lot. I see it every day in the ER. People who lost a toe, a foot, a leg because of a blister, a simple blister that never healed. They never even knew that it was there or felt it forming. And then there's your heart and blood vessels. Diabetes dramatically accelerates atherosclerosis, or the buildup of plaque inside your arteries. People with diabetes have 2 to 4 times the risk of heart disease and stroke compared to people without it. The same glycation damage that we've been talking about happens inside your coronary arteries or your heart arteries and inside the vessels inside your brain. It's not a separate problem. It's the exact same mechanism, just showing up in different places in your body. So for your brain, emerging research has started referring to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes because of how strongly chronic high blood sugar and insulin resistance correlate with chronic decline in dementia risk. Your brain runs on glucose, but it needs it delivered in a controlled and regulated way, not flooding it chaotically because the entire system basically broke down. And acutely, when blood sugar spikes extremely high, which happens in poorly controlled diabetes, you can develop what's called diabetic ketoacidosis, or another one that's related called HHNS, a genuinely medical emergency. Your blood becomes dangerously acidic. People come into my ER in this state confused, vomiting, breathing in strange labored patterns as their body desperately tries to correct their blood chemistry. Left untreated, it is absolutely fatal. I've stabilized patients in this exact condition. It is not rare. It happens regularly. We see it in the ER all the time. This is what's actually sitting at the end of a road that starts with a diagnosis of prediabetes, and nobody explained this to you. Blindness, kidney failure, amputation, heart attacks, strokes, dementia, a medical emergency that can kill you in a matter of hours if it goes far enough. That sandpaper has been running the entire time, quietly, while you felt completely fine. Before I get into how this actually gets reversed, if you're watching this and you're already worried about your own numbers, or you've been told that you're pre-diabetic and you want help building a plan around it, that's exactly the kind of thing I work with people on directly. Check the links below if that's something that you want help with. Now, let's get into the part that actually matters for this video, because this is fixable and this is what you came here to see. And this is the thing that nobody told my patient, and the part most people with prediabetes never are actually told either. This is reversible. Genuinely, scientifically, well-documented, reversible. So let's talk about medication first, because I want to be clear about where I stand on this. Metformin is the most commonly prescribed medication for prediabetes and early type 2 diabetes. It works primarily by reducing how much glucose your liver releases into your bloodstream and improving your cell's sensitivity to insulin somewhat. It's a genuinely useful medication. I prescribe it occasionally. It is not the enemy here. But here's what the actual research shows when it's compared directly to lifestyle interventions. The Diabetes Prevention Program, one of the most important clinical trials ever conducted on this topic, followed over 3,000 people with prediabetes and compared three groups: a placebo group, a metformin group, and an intensive lifestyle intervention group focused on modest weight reduction and 150 minutes of weekly activity. And the results? Metformin reduced progression to full diabetes by 31%. The intensive lifestyle intervention reduced it by 58%. Lifestyle nearly doubled the effectiveness of medications. And in participants over age 60, lifestyle intervention reduced progression by 71%. Just let that sit for a second. The thing most doctors reach for first, the pill, is meaningfully less effective than the thing most doctors don't have time to fully explain. And that is not a problem with the doctor. That is a problem with the system. And we've talked about this before. A physician does not have enough time to go through an entire lifestyle and dietary and weight loss plans with you. But the best thing they can do for you at the time is to give you a Band-Aid until you can do the lifestyle intervention to fix the underlying problem. And now I am here as a physician telling you what the underlying problem is and that you can fix it. And here's a statistic that genuinely troubles me. Despite this evidence being available for over 2 decades, fewer than 0.5% of the 88 million Americans alone with prediabetes have ever enrolled in a structured lifestyle program designed to reverse it. Less than 0.5%, 0.4% to be precise. The information gap here isn't a small oversight. It is a massive systemic failure to communicate something that could change millions of lives. Now, I want to go even further here, because some of you watching aren't pre-diabetic. You already have type 2 diabetes. And I don't want you to think that this conversation doesn't apply to you either. There was a trial, the DIRECT trial is what it was called. It was a rigorous, well-designed study conducted across dozens of primary care practices, took people who already had established type 2 diabetes, some for as long as 6 years, and put them through an intensive weight loss and lifestyle program. And the results: 46% of participants achieved diabetes remission within 12 months, compared to only 4% in the control group. And remission was strongly correlated with how much weight they lost. The more weight lost, the higher the likelihood of putting the disease into genuine remission, off medications with normal blood sugars. This is not a fringe claim. This is published, peer-reviewed, rigorously studied medicine. Type 2 diabetes, a disease most people believe is a one-way street, can, for a meaningful percentage of people, be put into complete remission through aggressive lifestyle change, not managed, absolutely reversed. And I want to be fully honest about the limits here too. Remission isn't guaranteed for everyone. The earlier you intervene at the prediabetes stage or in the first few years of type 2 diabetes diagnosis, the higher your odds are of remission. The longer the disease has been established, the harder full remission becomes. Though even then, lifestyle changes consistently slow progression and reduce complications. This isn't an all or nothing thing. Every step you take towards reversing this moves you away from blindness and kidney failure and amputation and heart disease at any stage, even if you don't reach full remission. Medication, when it's needed, is a bridge. a Band-Aid. It buys you time and protects you while you do the work that actually changes the underlying problem. It was never meant to be the only intervention. So let's get into exactly what the research-backed approach looks like. And this is what I walk my patients through as well. This is what actually moves the needle. 1, fix the food. This is the single biggest lever. The direct trial and the diabetes prevention program both center on the same core principle, and that is to reduce the constant glucose flooding into your bloodstream that's been overwhelming your system for years. Cut out processed carbohydrates and added sugars dramatically, not because carbs are evil, your great-great-great-grandparents ate carbohydrates, but because refined processed versions hit your bloodstream fast and hard repeatedly all day, every day. That sandpaper we talked about, every spike is another pass. Build your meals around real foods, proteins, vegetables, healthy fats, and whole food carbohydrate sources like tubers and fruits, which digest much slower and don't create the same dramatic glucose spikes. This is exactly the primal eating approach we talk about constantly on this channel, and it is specifically supported by the diabetes reversal research. Number 2, lose the excess weight, particularly visceral fat. The direct trial showed direct correlation. The more weight participants lost, the higher their remission rates. The diabetes prevention program achieved its 58% risk reduction with participants losing just 5 to 7% of their body weight. And that's not extreme. That's about 10 to 15 pounds for a lot of people. Visceral fat specifically is the fat around your organs, is metabolically active and directly worsens the insulin resistance. Losing it is one of the most powerful things that you can do to reverse this process. And number 3, move your body consistently. The research protocol was 150 minutes per week of moderate activity, which is about 20 minutes per day. Movement does something remarkable for insulin sensitivity. Your muscles can pull glucose out of the bloodstream without needing as much insulin to do it, essentially creating a second doorway into your cell that doesn't require the same broken lock. Walking after meals is particularly effective for blunting blood sugar spikes. Resistance training builds muscle, which increases your overall capacity to store and use glucose effectively. Both matter. Together, they matter even more. Number 4, sleep and stress matter more than people realize. Poor sleep directly worsens insulin resistance, sometimes dramatically. Even after just 1 or 2 nights of inadequate sleep, chronic stress elevates cortisol, and cortisol raises blood sugar directly. You can be doing everything right with food and exercise and still be undermining your progress if you're sleeping only 4 or 5 hours a night and running constantly high levels of stress. And number 5, know your numbers and then retest. Don't just guess. Get a fasting insulin, fasting glucose, and A1C at the start. Make the changes seriously for 90 days and then retest. The direct trial showed meaningful results within 12 weeks for many participants. You don't have to wait a year to know if this is working for you. This is exactly what I told my patient. This is exactly what I do with my clients. Real food, lose the excess weight, especially around the midsection, move daily, sleep, and manage your stress. Get retested in 3 months. My patient left that conversation with something she hadn't had in years, genuine hope, backed by something real, science. If any of this hit home for you, if you've been told you're pre-diabetic or even diabetic, and nobody walked you through what that actually means or what you can do about it, I want you to leave this video with the same thing my patient left that conversation with: hope, backed by real evidence, and a desire for change. This is reversible for most people at the prediabetes stage almost entirely, and even for established type 2 diabetes, real meaningful remission is achievable for a significant percentage of people who do the work. Real food, lose the excess weight, move daily, sleep, manage your stress, retest in 90 days. That's it. That's the whole protocol. No magic, just biology. Given its conditions, it needs to heal itself. If you want help putting this into action, please check the links below. I run a Primal 60 challenge every month. It will put this into action for you. If you want to work directly with me one-on-one, there is a link to a quiz that you can take below that'll kind of guide you along to get there. Until next time, keep moving.